Good morning. This is Emily Watson with CityLink. I'm here with Joe Alexander, also from CityLink. I'm the Director of Marketing, and Joe is the Planning Administrator. We are going to go ahead and wait just a couple more minutes to see if anyone else wants to join the meeting, and then we'll go ahead and get started. We are going to have a presentation portion where there'll be a PowerPoint explaining the proposed changes, and then we also have taken record of some of the comments that we received, and then at the end we will provide an opportunity for you to ask questions or provide feedback. This is our first time doing a virtual presentation, so please bear with us if there are any snags through it. We are going to try to do our best to make sure everybody is able to provide feedback and get the information that you'd like. Good morning again. This is Emily over at CityLink, and I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We're a couple of minutes after noon, so we're going to make sure we give you guys plenty of time to see the presentation and ask any questions. If you do have a question, please raise your hand if you can, if you're on the mobile version or app version of Microsoft Teams, and we will unmute you. Otherwise, at the end of the meeting, we will try to unmute everyone so that you're able to ask any questions or provide feedback. We do have James Gomez from Nelson Nygaard on this call. He is going to be doing the actual presentation portion, speaking about the changes that we're proposing. And then there is a PowerPoint presentation. So we will go ahead and get started with that. And again, thank you guys for attending and bearing with us as we try to navigate through our first virtual meeting.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you all for attending this first virtual meeting. My name is James Gomez. I'm with Nelson Nygaard. We are the transit consulting firm that manage this project. CityLink on the Move was initiated last year in April of 2019. The study looked at every single route in the entire system. It also examined every single bus stop and schedule. We collected ridership data for all 20 routes, and that enabled us to see how many people are getting on and off at every single bus stop for every single trip on every route. In addition to looking at where people are traveling to and from, we also had some really extensive community outreach in June of last year. We had an online survey that reached out to almost 1,000 members of the community, and we received feedback from all of those survey respondents about their different travel patterns, which routes they use and how often, as well as things that they like and dislike about existing service. We also learned about some of the places that they'd like to go or see improved service or improved bus stops. In addition to the online survey, we also went out and spoke to CityLink riders directly at the transit center downtown in Peoria. We had morning and afternoon open house events under the canopy in which we spoke to riders, and we also asked them about potential improvements to the system and what are the things that they'd like to see improved over the next several years. We also held 4 public meetings at various libraries across the service area, including downtown Peoria, East Peoria, in the northern portion of Peoria, as well as Pekin. And those meetings enabled people to speak with us directly, both CityLink staff as well as the consultant team, to hear about specific challenges that they're facing with the current system, as well as ways that they'd like to see service improved. Next slide, please. Can you go one more slide, please? And one more, please. Okay, so this slide shows just a couple of photos from the outreach events that we held. The first is at a library in East Peoria. The second is at the Downtown Transit Center. As you can see, we had maps at each one of the public meetings, as well as interactive surveys. We also asked people to give us very specific comments about either bus stops or schedules, routing, challenges or suggestions that they might have to improve CityLink bus service. And also want to point out that we also spoke to several CityLink bus drivers, and they told us some of the challenges that they're facing, as well as requests that they hear from riders on a regular basis. So the key goals of the study were focused on increasing ridership at the system level, trying to use the limited resources that CityLink has and try to make best use of those resources, and that being the number of buses and the number of hours that bus drivers work. So we looking at ways to make the service more effective and more efficient by changing some of the routes and moving them to places where they can serve more customers better. And what that means is that in some locations that few riders, where the ridership is low, might see some reductions or removal of bus service. Ultimately, we're trying to make service better for the vast majority of riders. So trying to improve the overall experience. And that's not just where the route travels or what the schedule looks like, how frequent it is, but also the hours of operation, bus stop conditions, connections between routes. All of those things make up the overall experience of riding transit. And the final product of the study was a 5-year plan that looked to not only improve bus service, but also expand it over a 5-year period. This slide highlights some of the key benefits of the first phase of the service plan, which is what we're recommending for next year, 2021. The first is to improve access to some key destinations across the service area, including major employment centers, grocery stores, by shifting some of the routes in various parts of the community. One thing that we noticed very early on is that bus service in some parts of the community does not provide direct access to grocery stores. An example of that would be in South Peoria, where customers have to transfer downtown to get to a grocery store in a different part of town because grocery stores no longer exist in their neighborhoods. So that was one of the key opportunities that we saw early on. Also trying to improve access to major employment centers, such as the shops at Grand Prairie. Also wanted to look at improving the hours of service that go to places in the northern part of Peoria, such as the Kroger along Knoxville, also extending service to the Schnucks and far north Peoria. So trying to have buses run later when people need them towards the end of the night. The routes that CityLink operates, they are very different in the number of riders that they carry. Some are very busy throughout the day and even throughout the night and weekends, whereas others shut down relatively early or do not even operate at all on weekends. So we wanted to focus resources putting more service on bus routes that carry more people. And we've identified 4 routes, and that would be routes 1, 7, 10, and 13, that would have more frequent bus service during the middle part of the day, roughly between the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Right now, those routes do not operate very frequently, so we think that upgrading them will benefit those users who make up a good percentage of the overall system's ridership. There are also several routes that would have later service at night, so extending from, for example, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Some of the routes that we're looking to expand late night service or night service on routes 3, 4, 7, and 11. Another thing that CityLink service does on the weekend is that it drops off pretty significantly from Saturday to Sunday. So we want to increase Sunday service as well to give people better access and shopping. Overall, the proposed route changes will result in more direct service, meaning that people will get from their homes to where they need to go in a faster, more direct fashion. We also want to eliminate the number of transfers that people make. So some of the routes take people directly to destinations that are important, rather than having to force people to go out of direction to the downtown transit center. We also looked at where there are several routes that are within just a couple of blocks from one another and look to space them out so that we could cover the same amount of ground but have more frequent service and later service, but not necessarily routes that are within just a couple of blocks from one another. And there's also a couple of services that would be eliminated altogether just to the extremely low ridership that we're currently seeing. An example of that would be currently in the East Peoria areas. There are a couple of routes that just don't carry quite as many people. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So this map shows where we would change some of the routes, eliminate portions, and also increase service. So where there are dashed lines, that's where existing service would be removed. An example of that would be Route 9 in East Peoria. That's at the bottom of the screen near the 150 highway label. That's a route that carries far fewer riders than other routes in the system. Another example of that of where service would be eliminated is along the interstate, the I-74 interstate. Route 16 would no longer travel along that path. Instead, shops at Grand Prairie would be served differently by Route 3, for example. There are several other segments, shorter segments that would not see service, such as North Street, which is currently served by Route 10. That's only a couple blocks away from Sheridan, and to the west, and then to the east is Knoxville, just a couple of blocks as well. So that's a segment that would also be removed. And then we also looked at increasing service on some of the biggest routes. I mentioned that earlier, that 30-minute service would be added during the midday period for routes 1, 7, 10, and 13. So those are represented on the map in a thicker line type. And those are become really the core routes of the system that you can always count on if they're going to be operating frequently and late into the night. Route 1 is really important because it serves so many key destinations, which is why that was identified as one route that should have all day frequent service. Today, it operates not near Bradley University, but on Columbia Terrace. So that route would be shifted so that it runs along by Bradley University, also on West MLK Street to serve any of the apartments just outside of downtown. But it hit several major destinations, such as the Walmart, that's just north of Forest Avenue. It continues on to serve the ICC Peoria campus, and then into the northern part of the city, serving the Walmart Supercenter and North Peoria North Branch Library. Route 10 is also one of the top two routes in the system as far as carrying a lot of passengers. Similarly, that serves a lot of key destinations, shopping centers. Northwoods Mall, for example, serves a cluster of apartments, Lexington Hills, and that's a route that also warrants a higher level of service, or 30 minutes throughout the day. After that, we have two more routes that would have 30-minute service all day, and that's Route 7 and 13. And these are a little different than the way they operate today. These would become shorter, but they would focus on serving many of the highest ridership portions of the South Peoria neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So while the previous slide just showed a map of all the route changes, and we're happy to go into that into more detail and answer any questions that you might have, we also want to show how route schedules are different. And this slide shows weekday service where frequencies are being improved, as well as where some routes are being extended later into the night, or we're seeing more frequent service during the night period. So the two different colors represent 30-minute service and 60-minute service. Orange would be 30-minute service, so more frequent, and then 60 is on that refers to just hourly service on some of the lower ridership routes. So the first increase or improvement that I'd like to point out is that, as I mentioned earlier, the four core routes, 1, 7, 10, and 13, would have 30-minute service throughout the day from essentially 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you would see more frequent service during that middle period of the day, where we found that a lot more people are using the bus to get to work, to get to various destinations. In addition, several routes would have their 30-minute service extended later in the afternoon period from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. So all of the routes that are highlighted in orange between 5 and 6 would see that more frequent service. You would not have to wait as long for a bus during that late afternoon, early evening time. And then lastly, a key weakness in the system's evening or night service today is that all routes drop off from either 30 minutes or 60 minutes to every 75 minutes so that they can all meet up at the transit center. And while that's great for connections, it means longer waits and just not as great access, either getting back home or getting to work or other destinations. So with all of the route changes that were made, CityLink would be able to bring all the routes back to 60-minute service after 6 p.m. So the wait times would not be as great. Next slide, please. Now, if you're only interested in one or two routes, or if you just like a more simple way of looking at the specific changes, this graphic does that. There are some routes that would not see any significant changes whatsoever. Routes 8, 12, 17, and 23 are examples of that. Other routes are seeing either minor to more major route changes or improvements to the schedule. We really did not look at scaling back any of the frequencies or schedule the start or end times of routes, but the biggest impacts will be in certain areas that carry very few riders, where service would either be removed or shifted to another street. But overall, we think that the recommendations are going to benefit far more riders than that they would negatively impact. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to point out that the recommendations for 2021 are only the first phase of CityLink on the Move. It's really just creating a framework or a foundation for future growth. And in future years, as more resources, meaning more vehicles, more hours of service become available, CityLink could build upon this new route network and more easily add service either during the midday period, so more routes could run 30 minutes all day long. During the nighttime, some routes could go from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. And then on weekends, although we would be addressing the deficiencies of Sunday service today, there'd be an opportunity to also increase service on Saturday and even further Sunday in the future. The CityLink on the Move plan also identifies many of the bus stop issues around the service area. We heard a lot of those when we were at the transit center. Riders gave us specific examples of bus stops that are either unsafe or not in ideal locations. So we highlighted where new stops should go in, where shelters should be installed, and where sidewalks and crosswalks are needed to make it easier and safer for riders to get to key bus stops. We also heard many of those suggestions from bus operators as well. Next slide, please. So that covers our high level overview of the recommended changes. The next steps are just to receive feedback from the public and make modifications if necessary to these recommendations before looking to implement them in 2021. And with that, I would like to hand it back over to CityLink staff, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm also joined by my colleague, Marielle, who could also help answer any questions that you might have regarding any of the recommendations or proposed changes. Emily or Joe, do you want to speak to some of the other ways that people can provide feedback? Or
Yeah,
you-
sorry
oh,
about that. We were just trying to get the PowerPoint back to a screen. Yes, so there is an online survey portion. So if you know anyone who wasn't able to attend this meeting today or any of the other public meetings we have coming up on our website, you can go to citylinkonthemove.org, and there is a survey link on there, which hopefully you're seeing on your screen right now, where you can provide feedback. It's a very brief survey. It only takes a few moments. But everything about CityLink on the Move and the proposed changes is on that website, citylinkonthemove.org. So we do encourage you to visit that website so that you can see the potential changes, and there's also contact information on there. This slide here has Joe's contact information on it. He's the planning administrator here, so he is the one that has been really involved in this project from the beginning. So if you have anything you want to send directly to him, you're welcome to do that as well. His email address is right there. It's jalexander@ridecitylink.org. And then, as I mentioned, we do have some other public meetings coming up. We have another virtual opportunity this evening, and then we will be in Pekin tomorrow, and at the Pekin Public Library, and it's from 12 to 2 p.m. And then on Friday, we will be at the East Peoria Civic Plaza, room 112, from 10 to 12. And then next week, we will be at the Life Together Center in the evening from 5 to 7. That is on Sheridan Road. And then we'll be at the Transit Center on Wednesday, November 18th, where there's two opportunities. One is from 9 to 11 a.m. and the other option is 3 to 5 p.m. So there's going to be several opportunities coming up to share your thoughts on this and to learn more about it, but we do want to go ahead and open up to questions here. We did ask for any public comments or feedback when you submitted your registration for the meeting. We didn't really get any comments that were specific to the study, so we're not going to read any of them, but I am going to check now to see if anyone has raised their hand and wants to ask any questions or provide feedback. And I am currently not seeing anyone, so if you do want to ask a question, please let us know and we will unmute you. You can raise your hand on the app. And if you are calling on the phone, we will unmute you here in just a moment. Bear with us just one moment. We're going to try to unmute. Yokita, you are unmuted. Now, if you'd like to say a few words. Yokita, if you want to say something, you can unmute yourself now. We've given you that opportunity. Okay, we now have it so that anyone who wants to say anything can unmute themselves. You will have to unmute yourself if you're muted. And let us know if you have any comments or questions.
Okay, this is Yokita. I just want to double check. I am showing that they wanted to extend service for Saturday and Sunday in Pekin. Is that correct?
Saturdays. Oh, Yokita, can you hear us?
Yes.
There will not be any Saturday service in Pekin because they currently don't have service. So we're not offering new service in Pekin. This is just for the existing weekday, Saturday and Sunday service. It doesn't create any new service.
Okay.
Anything else, Yokita?
No.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask or provide any feedback? Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. But if you do have anything, you think of anything after this meeting, please feel free to contact Joe. His email's on there on the screen right now, or visit our website, citylinkonthemove.org. And we'll certainly be letting everyone know once we do decide to move forward with these changes. And thank you very much for attending today. We appreciate it. And thank you for writing CityLink.